see if players are getting discouraged and if that can impact their performance? And if so, what are some things you can do to address that? Is that just natural at a time like this?
Definitely. I mean, don't have a ton of experience with this, but everybody's disappointed. Nobody feels good about the outcome of last night. So, we're a very accountable group, and we'll continue to work through it. Obviously, with the getting back this morning, the coaches really have jumped right into Cincinnati. We'll continue that through tonight, and we'll have a chance to visit with the players tomorrow. We'll obviously review quickly the Baltimore game and get into Cincinnati. But these are new experiences for us to go through, and most importantly, we need to learn from it and dig ourselves out of this hole that we've created.
Did you see some effort issues late in the game the other night? Troy Aikman talked about there was a lack of effort late in the game. Did you see that at all when you watched the tape?
I would say our finish was not good enough. Clearly, definitely in spots during the game, and I think that's something that you don't want to be addressing, particularly this time of year. So, yeah, we did not finish very well. That's for sure.
Yeah, I guess that's piggybacking on what David said about being discouraged. Was it more because they were just discouraged on how the game was going, and how do you get that fire for the last 4 games?
Well, I think it's really is to go back through it and just to make sure you understand the why, what happened, and what's disappointing is if you look at the game. The way it started, obviously the offense was productive, moving the football. Special teams had the big play. We had a situational call with the 4th and 1, and we were definitely not intact there as far as the execution. And our focus going into the game, the number one priority was Lamar Jackson. Number 2 was to limit the big play runs. And I felt that we had a good week of preparation going into it, but obviously our run defense did not answer the bell.
Mike, on that note, DeMarcus Lawrence and Leighton Vander Esch talked to us after the game about some of the times they felt they were second-guessing themselves and making the wrong reads. You mentioned December is late to be blaming the scheme, but what is the key to fixing this after 12 weeks?
Well, I think the most important thing is just to make sure we're totally in tune with the continuity connection that clearly was not where it needed to be last night. That's the only way you get consistency. The consistency is what propels you forward. It's anytime a player makes a mistake in a game, I think it's admirable that they stand up and take accountability for it. But also to me, it's a two-way street. There's a methodology to frankly how I handle it in the media, and there's a reason behind it. Because when I see a player make a mistake, the first thing that I look at is did we give the player enough opportunities in practice to see that look, particularly the play that you're talking about with Leighton and D. Law. I mean, it was a situational defense that was called at the right time. We got exactly what we were looking for, but our execution wasn't there. So frankly, that's kind of where we are. Sometimes we've had some of those moments this year where you put in a situational call and you have a chance to rep it in the practice, but it didn't show up in the game. So I think that's always the accountability you're looking for. So as a coach, you want to make sure you're giving the players the resources, the attempts, and the practice looks to make sure it shows up during the game. And then obviously I think our guys have been very accountable when they have made mistakes.
Mike, you mentioned giving enough time to these players' practices, given that you had 11-12 days to prepare for the Baltimore game, and now you're on a short week. How much does that concern you? They'll be prepared for Cincinnati. And on a similar note, do you feel this defense has consistently sustained improvement at any time this season?
Well, you got a couple questions there. Number one, we're on a short week, so his schedule is part of the challenge. We all understand that. So we have a chance to talked to the trainers briefly this morning, and then we'll get with them again this evening just to see where we are as far as who's available and who's not tomorrow. But we'll be ready when we go to Cincinnati. And then, obviously we had a lot going on last week preparing for Baltimore. And as I've already stated, I thought we had a strong week defensively. I thought our preparation defensively was actually better than our preparation offensively. So I think that's not abnormal when that does happen. But, the offense played better than the defense in the game.
Obviously, Mike, you guys didn't practice today. Can you tell us what the players were responsible for? And Zeke is on the injury report with a calf. Is that something that might keep him limited when you do get back to the field and going into Sunday?
I mean, the early report on Zeke is, we don't see him doing a whole lot. Obviously, in practice Thursday and Friday. We'll have more information as the week goes on. And I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question?
What were the players' responsibilities today when you guys got back in? Did they show up at Star, and did you have meetings or?
Yeah, definitely.
What did the players do?
We have what we call a sick call. So that was today where the players all come in, check in with the training staff and flush work on those types of things, and obviously responsible for the COVID testing was their plan today.
And then regarding the COVID testing, you mentioned it. Have you got any results yet based off of Dez's positive last night? Has that had any impact on you guys today?
No, I have nothing to report on that front. So as I know, everything's been negative.
I mean, obviously it's hard to do it this week because you're in a short week, but going forward, how much would you like to get some of your younger players some more reps the rest of the way?
I think that's a great question. I think when you look at each individual player, you go through it, and definitely some of our young guys have earned the possible opportunities. So that's game plan decisions as you move through tonight will determine some of that. So that's something that we'll talk about, which is what you normally do, and frankly with some players that may be coming back off IR, this and that. So the roster management is something that we're going to have to look at here in the next 48 hours.
We talked a lot about the up and downs of special teams. Just wondering, how do you get a delay a game on that field goal try? What was it? What happened there?
Disappointing. I think really the mechanics. I think we're in a huddle a little too long, but I think anything as you manage the game, whether it's your quarterback, obviously the holders knew, you read body language. I mean, ultimately, you're responsible for the clock. You don't want to waste the time out there, but we were set for the field goal. I was surprised that the ball wasn't snapped, and we took the delay of game. So obviously that's at the end of the day, game management is something that comes back to our operation, and like anything, ultimately my responsibility. But still, I think as a whole, we need to make those field goals. I thought the offense did a nice job moving the football, throughout the game. There was definitely a game where, I didn't think it was going to be that high scoring going into it. But it was a game where you're playing a tough defense. So I mean, those field goal opportunities are ones definitely we need to hit.
You mentioned the word accountability a few times already in this conference call. When you see a lack of effort in some spots of the game, what's the recourse for that inside your building? How do you go about addressing that to players in a group setting or an individual setting? How do you go about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's like anything. You have a methodology, you have a process. We have an extensive grading and evaluation process that goes on, not only after games but also after practice. So, every snap that a player participates in a game is evaluated, it's recorded, and without getting into the details of all that. So it's obviously something that's presented and identified with them in a group, also identified with them individually. We start off in team meetings and go through the overviews and then obviously break up offense, defense. So I'm a big believer in self-scout is more important than the opponent scout. That's a process that I've always done. So, and I think our players and coaches, and I think have done an excellent job with that part of it. It's something that's new here. It's always different everywhere you go. So it's a process that we've done a good job getting implemented with our IT department and the football technology component of it. So and it takes the whole process. I think the coaches being accountable to the players when things are not clean for them, and vice versa, that the players are accountable for growth that is definitely needed throughout the season.
Where did the failures lie when you evaluated the run defense last night? We could see from home just the some eye discipline in certain areas, but when you looked at it, where were those shortcomings, and be it with coaching or player execution, how do you go about closing the gap so that the execution is better on game day?
Well, I think like we discussed early in our time together, one of my earlier meetings with the media, I don't correct players in the media. I think that's part of the two-way street process of accountability. It's definitely something I've always exercised. I don't see the benefit of going through player grades in front of a camera. It's something that hasn't maybe served me well for public perception, but to me, I think it's an easy way out. I think evaluation, in particular, in this game, in the in-depth of, without stating the obvious, sometimes mistakes that are made in the game are obvious. We clearly understand, what happened. Player, it's a breakdown, but there's also a lot of times where there may be an adjustment, a call, and things leading up to that go into that. So I think those conversations are for our accountability sessions that we have after each contest, and that's the way I've done it, and that's the way I addressed this in the beginning of the season.
Mike, when you have a player like Andy who spent a lot of time in Cincinnati, 9 years, I think, when he goes back to play his former team, have you ever talked to your players that have had this situation and say, hey, don't try and do too much, don't try and impress everybody, don't put too much on yourself here?
Oh, definitely. I think you always run into these types of situations, particularly with older players, and the longer you're in the league, you'll experience it. So, I think every situation is different for each individual. I think with Andy's maturity and personality, and I mean he's been at this a long time, and I'm sure he's looking forward to going back on a number of different fronts. But I have not spoke to him about it yet. But yeah, I think it's definitely something you're always aware of, and at some point there'll be some type of conversation, between players and coaches.
And with how Andy's played in his 5 games as a starter, in your mind, does he still have it to be a starter, a long-term starter in this league, be it here or somewhere else with how he's played?
Oh, definitely. I think so. In my opinion, I think last night was clearly probably one of his better performances. I think playing against the defense, and it's an uncommon opponent. Their ability to mix the different personnel groupings, and I thought Kellen was calling the game with a lot of tempo, as far as the play entry, and so there was a lot going on in and out of the game, and I thought Andy handled that very, very well. As far as the schematic challenge and his ball distribution, I thought was excellent. We were able to. I think we had 30 plus completions, and I thought he was decisive. He was getting the ball out of his hand, and I thought he played probably one of his better games as a Dallas Cowboy.
Mike, y'all's game against San Francisco was flexed out of the Sunday night slot. What goes through your mind when you hear that, and how much do you think it speaks to the improvement y'all need to make at 3-9?
Well, I think number one, I think it's a reflection of just where we are right now as a football team. So I mean, these are the types of things that I guess happen when you're not successful. So we're disappointed, and then make no bones about it, and that's that's all part of the focus moving forward as we prepare for Cincinnati.
And And the Giants and Washington each upset opponents with winning records this week. Y'all have yet to beat an opponent with a winning record. How much do you see that as a key point, just like you talked about the importance of a road win as showing that y'all are able to contend?
I haven't given it any thought. We're just focused on winning the next game and, more importantly, improving off a number of things we need to improve on from our last contest.
Cal Biotis, Trayvon Diggs, either of them, do you believe are candidates to resume practice this week? And also, another IR-related question, you guys placed Zach Martin on that list days ago. Do you consider his season to be over?
I think of the three players, I think Tyler is the only one that has potentially may be able to practice this week, of the three.
Okay.
Good. All right, thank you.